Okay, so I assume I can start. Good evening, everyone. Sorry to say good evening again, but I'm in Singapore with a significant time lag, so here it's almost 11 p.m. Well, the main message I would like to convey during this short presentation is that I do believe there's a lot of good reason for this topic of quantified self and wearable device and mobile health technologies to be from now on associated with the Human Brain Project. Why I did so? Well, first of all, the quantified self topic is relatively recent. It's about 10 years from now where it has been defined. And if you look at this different definition, I assume you will agree with me, we're discussing of probably what can be considered the top biomarker of the human brain. Once you understand how the brain is wired, how it develops itself, I assume that what we're most interested in is how it works and how do we measure how it works, not just during an fMRI investigation, but in the real life. The reason why the human brain was made for in the beginning. And definitely measuring human behavior as can be done by quantified self technology is probably what is closest to this description of the human brain functionalities. Ferath alluded to the role of the Human Brain Project in precision medicine, and you know that precision medicine has become something very important in medicine in general. There are massive initiatives, especially in the US, and interestingly enough, you all know that precision medicine comes from genomics to start with, but it is obvious that the main project in the field being organized in the US are now clearly incorporating the quantified self dimension into precision medicine as being possibly the most interesting clinical counterpart to the genomic dimension. Now, quantified self largely goes through or is largely measured through wearable device, not only, not exclusively, but that's what we're primarily are working with at the moment. A lot of different devices, some of which are being developed by big companies, and this is also one important aspect in this field, which companies are involved in this development can participate to them. So here you see just the illustration of the Google Lens developed by Google, but also in a partnership with Novartis for measuring glucose in diabetes. So this is really a major initiative. And they're looking for developing a much more sophisticated lens in the future that could measure many more parameters. And one other example among many is the Apple Watch. Even though what can delineate a number of limitations to the currently available Apple Watch, but the idea that you can measure relevant biomarker of describing human behavior and human pathology with a wristband is clearly becoming more and more popular. And you see already with the Apple Watch program like the one developed at the Johns Hopkins that look at helping specific pathology like epilepsy and seizure detection, which is my primary field of expertise. So indeed, at the moment, the mostly used wearable device is a wristband or a watch, and it can incorporate a number of sensors. I'm not going to go into the detail. The most widely used are those describing movement, so-called actimetry, pulse or EKG, and the skin conductance, electrodermal reactivity, which is supposed to be a marker of your level of stress in general, and more generally of your vegetative, neurovegetative activity. What is specific to wearable device, if you compare it to other type of biomarker that we work with in medicine, whether you talk about genomic, whether you talk about neuroimaging. Here, it's devices that are being primarily used and purchased by the general public, by the people. And more than half of the U.S. citizens have already purchased such wearable. Most of them are probably not reliable in terms of quantifying human behavior reliably. But it just demonstrates the potential of using this information due to the fact that it will be so largely disseminated in the population, either diseased population or healthy population. We're discussing it, and I told you my main message was emphasizing the relevance of quantified-self for the Human Brain Project. The Human Brain Project is funded by the EU, primarily by DG Connect, and we should be aware that mobile health is a priority for the European Union. The European Union is clearly very much engaged into those developments. A few years ago, they have delineated mobile health as one of their top priorities, together with mental health. So we see here the link within the EU priorities between Human Brain Project and quantified-self research. And the reason for this is that they believe, as I do believe, that this new technology offers some ways to cope with the huge cost of the handicap associated with neurological disease. Neurological disease, or disease affecting the brain, including psychiatric disease actually, account for 5% of the gross domestic product of all European countries. So it's 800 billion per year. It's really huge. It's more than the cost of cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease united. So it's a huge challenge, and the cost is primarily due to the handicap in relation to those condition. And novel technology are not viewed as a way to cure this disease, but to reduce the burden of the handicap by providing different ways for the patient to be better treated and gain more autonomy. I'm not going to get into the detail. This slide is just to show that depending on the type of disease, you can think of very different possibilities and application deriving from novel technologies. It's not just one way through. It's not just hoping that the patient will have a more healthy life, will do more physical activity thanks to this device. It's really going through very specific clinical application, and we probably heard a very more eloquent example in the next presentation regarding Parkinson's disease. The EU is very much engaged in that process, but it's still the beginning, and they keep on writing the guidelines that should help us developing that field of research, because there's a lot of devices available for the population, most of which are probably not reliable. Some are reliable, definitely, and there's yet very few research demonstrating that those devices, those technologies are really useful and should really be implemented in patient management. For this, as for new drugs, we need study, we need high-level evidence, and we need guidelines to know how to perform those studies. And definitely, we cannot just rely on the paradigm that we've been using in health for decades. The way we develop a drug is very well standardized. It's very costful. It's very time-consuming. It takes about 12 years and up to $5 billion for developing a major new drug. And that's completely irrelevant type of assessment for novel technologies. So we need a new approach. That's what we're developing in Lausanne, and I guess that's what I was invited to join tonight. We're developing a platform that is really dedicated to provide all the IT and, more generally speaking, organizational infrastructure to help delivering those kind of study, because this is really what is needed at the moment and where we mostly fail for moving the field forward. I'm not going to get into any detail. If you want to know how the platform is organized, it's still under construction, by the way, so it's in the early stages. I will be happy to give you more detail. And I'd like to conclude now by saying that indeed, this was again my main message, quantified self and mobile health offer high potential to reduce the burden of brain disease, to tackle health priorities in Europe and elsewhere, to connect with people at large. I think this is a unique opportunity to have more connection between the population in general and science. And we know we're often failing at making that connection, but here there's really a unique opportunity to do so because so many people are interested by this device.
So Jay and Paulo are basically
willing
to do whatever we say. They're willing to teach a couple. They're very
I'm hearing someone else on the line. Do we have a problem?
I think it's fixed. That was just the one who unmuted.
Okay, so let me just finish quickly. It's also an opportunity to materialize precision medicine and materialize in the way that just using genomic is, in my view, and I think many share this view, unlikely to really bring us to the level of precision medicine we would like, whereas adding those behavioral measurements might help us achieving that goal. Regarding the Human Brain Project proper, I think it could be a great enrichment for the reason I previously developed, and I use this neologism, ecologized HBP outcome, that is, moving towards what we're the most interested in, human behavior, what the human brain produces in terms of behavior and not just in terms of shape. And also, it's a way to value the HBP medical informatic platform that Ferath has shown you. And actually, we're working in the same department with Ferath, so we have already good connection to move into that direction. And more generally, to create big data synergies, because we heard about those big data created by the HBP, and obviously those deriving from the quantified self are entering the same field. So, well, I just hope I convinced you that there was an interest and that it was quite relevant for Karen Risgaard and the Danish Technological Board to come with that proposal to discuss this webinar tonight. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you. A very nice and informative presentation. I enjoyed it, at least. I just have a quick question myself, and that is where you want to collect this type of data. Is it also, is it clinicians that should guide it, or should it be more free, open to everyone, or how do you see the potential?
Well, there's a lot of possibilities. I think definitely within neurotech we are biased towards organizing well-structured and well-limited studies where, like for any clinical studies, people provide an informed consent, and you're talking about possibly limited number of patients, hundreds or thousands, not millions, but everything is under control, including the data safety and data protection, which is a major issue in the field. But I also value the possibility to collect data from people in general using device whenever it is sought to be relevant. This raises other issues, and there are other groups who have more expertise in the field and who know how to, manage in every ways those data generated by the public without a clinical study proper. So I think both options are as valuable and complementary, and both might be used within the HBP.
Thank you. I have one more question, and that's a little bit about the time horizon. What time frame do you see that this has potential not to be only research, but also could be included in the the clinical care?
I think it can move rapidly in the field. Honestly, in fact, we already have a number of devices that provide reliable measurement and that are entering commercial stages. The main issues those devices are facing is reimbursement. Because of the lack of study, in many instances, they cannot claim for reimbursements through medical insurance. And generally speaking, the health system in most countries is not yet ready to incorporate this device into clinical care, again, in terms of reimbursement. But in terms of value for the patient, I think some of the products are already there, and others will be available in the near future. So I think it's really for today and tomorrow already.
Thank you. Are there anyone else in the audience who has questions? I'll just see the chat. Oh. If not, then you can think about it, and then you'll probably also have time by the end of the webinar. Then I'll give the word to the next presenter, which is Simon Bentholm. I'll just find you somewhere.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Actually, it's just the first time I'm doing this. The question is to Philippe, and he said that reimbursement or getting the devices integrated in the medical system is abstracted, and the main reason is in terms of reimbursement. But do you see any other obstacles or reasons that make it difficult for the medical system to be willing to even recognize the potential of self-tracking's contribution to any kind of meaningful knowledge or any kind of meaningful health improvement?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, the primary limitation that we're trying to tackle at our level, and that apply not just for reimbursement but for acceptability in general by the medical field, is the lack of high-level evidence. You know that to come on the market, a new drug or a new medical classical device need to show that it makes a difference in a well-controlled randomized study. And if you don't demonstrate this, even if your product are the huge rational, beautiful experimental data, has non-control experience in some patient who claim that it helped them a lot, until you have demonstrated the real impact of the drugs through the well-controlled randomized control study, it cannot be approved by the regulatory authority, it cannot be really considered by the medical community, and it cannot be reimbursed. So I think that the main limitation, most of the wearable devices that are proposed for disease are currently facing. One of the reasons is that for performing the same kind of study is extremely difficult at the moment, because as I explained again, it's a question of time, it's a question of the level of funding needed, and so we need some different kind of economic model to move from potential to the demonstration that the wearable device improve health and will deserve to be reimbursed. The issue of data safety also exists. It's been often put forward as a major problem, but personally, I don't think this, I think it's an excuse often. It's more an excuse than anything else. People are sharing much more personal data. I mean, their picture during holidays, it's much more personal than their chronic EKG recording.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.